Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got a really interesting combination to try out. This is a test I've wanted to do for quite some time now, and going through and just organizing the ammo cabinet is when I found some of these loads. I thought I had some left, I just didn't quite remember where they were until I stumbled upon them. So here we are, I've got the setup, I've got the shells, and we're going to find out exactly what my actual childhood turkey setup might have been capable of. It's not anything impressive, and it's probably not going to look all that great in the pattern department either, but this is what I had to work with back then, so I want to see on a legit pattern board what it was capable of. So first up, we'll start with the actual shotgun, that being this guy. If you've been around the channel for some time, then you've probably seen this shotgun tested a few times here before. This is an old New England Firearms Pardner. It's a model SB1, and it is a youth model as well. It's chambered in 410. It's got a 22-inch fixed full choke barrel and a very short length of pull here. Everything from pretty much here on back is all extra recoil pad that I added on top of everything to get it to at least be usable for an adult stature anyway. And I just recently got it drilled and tapped to put a red dot on top, since you had to absolutely bury your face to give you any hopes of getting a proper sight down that front bead. So a little bit, goofy looking setup, old single shot with a red dot, but it's at least much more usable now. But this is the shotgun that a family friend had given to me to turkey hunt with when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, something like that. I remember going to an indoor range and shooting some hanging printed out turkey heads on some just printer paper at probably what was 15 yards or so, but that was a long time ago now. And of course the shells we had back then were very limited as well. So this was the setup that I had, just minus the red dot. We know nowadays with the TSS loads, this can't actually be a good enough turkey gun out to 30-35 yards to do the job. But we'll see what it does with my actual loads that I used to hunt with. So as for those shells, I had 2 different loadings that were used kind of on and off depending on what the store had, but the main one was some of these. There's some old Winchester Super Speed Xtra game loads. They are a 410 2.5-inch half-ounce payload of lead 6s at about 1275 feet per second. So yeah, a 2.5-inch shell with only a half ounce of lead 6s in a 410. Definitely not the ideal turkey setup, that's for sure. Doesn't mean it can't do the job, but it's going to be extremely limited. I also used some Remington game loads as well. I do have some of those left, so we will be testing those as well at some point. But these are the shells that I ran most commonly, so we'll see what it can do. And going back to the late 2000s when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, somewhere right in that range, I never actually did kill a turkey with this setup until just a couple years ago with some TSS shells through that gun. But based on the patterns we're going to see, I'm probably going to be pretty glad that I didn't get the chance to, because it's going to be extremely limited. Back then, my dad wasn't much of a big turkey hunter. We had essentially one family friend's farm up in Maryland that we would go to a couple of times every so often and try, and I quite honestly don't even remember if there was turkeys up there or not, because we definitely never got on anything even remotely close off of that particular farm. So as for how we're going to run this test, we're going to kind of keep it the same as usual, but I want to do a little bit extra here. I've got 3 targets set up down there, so we're going to shoot 3 shots, one at 20 yards, one at 30 yards, and another at 40 yards. I think we're going to have a dead bird at 20. 30 is probably going to be very iffy, and I don't think we're going to like what we see at 40. But you never know. That's why I want to try 20, 30, and 40 and see what we get. So what we'll do, we'll take the 20-yard shot, we'll look at the pattern, then we'll come back and take the 30-yard shot, look at it, and then come back and take the 40-yard shot and look at it. And that should give us a pretty decent idea on what these might actually be capable of from this combo. I'm not expecting anything great for sure, but I want to know what kind of pattern capability I actually had back when I was 9 years old or so. So let's start with 20 yards. We'll take our shot and we'll see what we get to start with. Okay, we had 1266 through the chrono for that first shot. Boss claim is 1275, so 22-inch barrel. We're in the ballpark for sure, as far as velocity goes anyway, and that's just fine for a lead 6. All right, well, here's our 20-yard target. We'll take a quick look at that, and Yeah, indeed. At 20 yards, I would have had a dead turkey with that combo all day long. There are 2 through the brain and several more down through the spine area that would have done the job. And to be fair, there's nowhere left or right, up or down he can go to and get through that pattern. But you can obviously see that lead sixes and a 2.5 inch shell from a 410 is extremely limited. I think we all knew that coming into it. But this was kind of right before the era that TSS really came out. I'm sure there were some guys hand loading it, but in 2009, 2010, something like that, having a TSS load off the shelf for a 410 really wasn't a thing yet, for sure. So if you wanted to run a 410, this is the kind of stuff you kind of were limited to. So 20 yards, it might not light up the pattern board, but we have a decent core area there to work with, and that's a dead bird. And of course, with me being, 8, 9, 10 years old, 20, maybe 25 yards is probably the ideal range anyway for that scenario. So now we'll step it back to 30 yards, take our shot, and see what it gives us there. And that shell gave us 1276 through the chrono. Boss claims 1275 again. So we pretty much hit the nail on the head there. So it's looking like we're legitimately getting their claim, even from our 22-inch barrel. All right, well, here is our 30-yard pattern, and immediately it is a completely different story for sure. Yes, we technically still do have a dead turkey at 30 yards. There is one pretty much right through the eyeball there that would have done the job, as well as maybe you would have got a couple of those down there in the bottom end of the neck bones. So it is a dead bird at 30 yards from this particular shot, but I'm saying it right now, this is the absolute limit. Couple feet farther and that bird probably would be alive. And even then, I don't know that I would reliably trust that to do the job. It would have probably worked out, but seeing what I'm seeing now, I definitely would not take a 30-yard shot with this combo, ideally, that's for sure. This is obviously why lead in a 410 is extremely limited. Now, yes, this is a 2.5 inch shell with only a 1/2 ounce of sixes. You could go to a 3-inch load of sixes, get a handful more pellets to fit in that shell, and that would help a little. At 30 yards and in, you could even go up to a 3-inch 7.5 shot and still kill the turkey just fine. That would give you another handful of pellets to work with. So that would have probably been a little bit safer of an idea than these 2.5 inch sixes, but this is the realistic limitations of what my setup was capable of. It's a fixed full choke. It measures 395 for a constriction, so it's not overly tight, but very standard for a full choke in a 410. This is just a case of what you would get before TSS came out. So I'm going to call a little bit of an audible here, I think. We could shoot this at 40 yards, but I think we all know what's going to happen. We might have a handful of pellets at best on the entire paper. So now that we've seen 20 and 30, we saw at 20, it was plenty capable. At 30, I'm saying that is the absolute maximum limit. And even then, I don't think I would trust that. So let's go right in the middle with 25 yards and we'll see what that looks like. I think that's probably going to be a little bit better and a little more realistic use case for this type of setup. So let's walk it to 25 yards now and we'll see what it looks like when we split the difference. And that shell gave us 1268 through the chrono. We're still bouncing right around that 1275 claim, so looking pretty consistent for velocities overall. And here we have our 25-yard target. And this is kind of back to about where I expected it to be. 25 yards and in, I'm saying is probably the safe bet with this kind of combination. Now, we got pretty close here. There are a number of pellets right below the brain and some that might have just barely clipped the spine there. But other than that, not really any bone hits all the way down through the rest of the neck area. So that bird may do some flopping, but I think we got just enough up here on the very edge of his neck to do the job. But you can see just how close it is to you just having an unlucky pellet placement and completely missing all the vitals of that bird there. Pretty close. So 25 and in is definitely the limit that I had for these for sure. And again, that does make sense for a 8, 9, 10-year-old with that kind of setup to just set up over some decoys on the edge of a field like we used to and try and call them in. Never happened for us back when I was that young, but this just goes to show what kind of pattern that I had to work with. There are definitely way better shells out there that were capable of more than this, even back then in 2008 to 2010 era. Like a 3-inch load of sixes would be a little better, or that 3-inch 7.5 I was talking about earlier, that would do the job fine as well. But this is what I had to work with. And it would still absolutely kill a turkey dead, but you're just going to have to be up close and personal with them, that's for sure. I was maybe hoping for a little bit better out of it, but I'm not at all surprised either. But hey, now I know what the pattern legitimately looks like, and if for one reason or another I wanted to try and hunt with that combo, 25 and in is the limit that I'm going to set myself with. A pretty interesting test to see the different patterns for sure. And here are your 20, 25, and 30 yard patterns side by side so you can see the difference directly next to each other. If you guys want to pause and look at them all side by side, there you go. And here is one of the wads out of those shells. I was only able to find one. They're pretty small, and these petals are kind of right on the edge of coming apart. So the other two very well could have kind of just shredded themselves apart, but it's nothing fancy overall. I mean, I guess you could call the petals coming apart here some damage to it, but nothing stuck down in there. And I don't know that these were doing a ton necessarily anyway. It's just a 410 lead load. They're very limited, especially through a setup like that. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about this combo right here? Definitely a pretty interesting test for sure. I've been wanting to do that for a long time, to actually put my childhood turkey hunting setup on a big patterning board to see what it was capable of. And clearly, 20 yards out to about 25 over there is going to do the job. Turkey is not going to survive that kind of pattern right there. However, you can see right here with 30 yards, that is the limit. And would it even be a reliable limit? I don't know. You saw that we were so close to not actually getting any vital hits at 25 yards. So I probably wouldn't trust that ideally to do the job. But if anything, this just goes to show what a difference TSS has made when it comes to 410 especially, but really all the sub gauges. 20 gauge with lead is even borderline past 30 yards. And this just wouldn't do it past 30 yards. Maybe you would get lucky with one random pellet through the neck area if you tried it at 40, but I wouldn't hinge my bets on it, that's for sure. So now, at least I know what it was capable of, and who knows, maybe at some point, if we have the right setup, the right property, the right area that the turkeys are in and stuff like that, to where we know our shots are going to be right up close and personal, maybe I'll bring that combo out and we might go hunting with it at some point for turkeys. We'll see when we get there. But this is definitely a pretty interesting test for me, at least, to see what it was capable of. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is this about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you ever run a 410 with a really basic lead load like that for turkey hunting purposes? Did you have a childhood setup pretty similar to that? Or what was your setup for turkey hunting when you were younger? Is this a combo you would actually ever hunt with, whether it had been back when you were a kid or today? And if so, what kind of range limitations would you put on that? Would you trust it out to 30 yards? Or is it going to be kind of a 20-yard type of setup? And maybe what other stuff you want to see when it comes to either putting different shells through that old NEF Pardner, or maybe we bring these shells back out, put them through my Mossberg 500 with an actual tighter turkey choke and see what they can do then. Let me know what y'all want to see. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.